70,000 years ago, the temperature dropped. Not gradually, not in the way you experience a cold winter. The planet entered one of the most severe glacial periods in human history, and global temperatures fell by roughly 15 degrees Celsius within a geological eye blink. Ice sheets expanded across continents, sea levels dropped, entire ecosystems collapsed, and somewhere in southern Africa, huddled in the last habitable pockets of a freezing world, the human population crashed to somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 individuals. The entire human species, every person alive, every ancestor you will ever have, compressed into a population smaller than the number of people in a single city block. We almost did not make it. And the reason we did, the specific reason that thread of human existence did not snap permanently, is not the story you have been told. It is not the story of individual toughness or physical superiority. It is the story of what humans figured out when everything around them was trying to kill them. And some of what they figured out was extraordinary in ways that built the foundation of everything human civilization would ever become. Let us start with the cold itself, because you need to understand what your ancestors were actually facing before you can understand what surviving it required. At the peak of the last glacial maximum, 20,000 years ago, average temperatures in Europe were roughly 10 degrees Celsius colder than today. In winter, temperatures regularly dropped to -30 and below in what is now Central Europe. The growing season was reduced to a fraction of modern length. Megafauna, woolly mammoths, cave bears, giant deer roamed ice-covered landscapes, and small bands of humans with no electricity, no synthetic insulation, no central heating of any kind were living in those landscapes year-round, not passing through, living, raising children, growing old. Your body, without external assistance, can maintain its core temperature down to roughly -10 degrees Celsius for a limited time before hypothermia sets in. At -20 with wind, you have hours. At -30, you have less. Your ancestors had none of the technology you would reach for in those conditions. No Gore-Tex, no down jackets, no emergency shelters, nothing that did not come directly from the landscape around them. So, what did they actually do? The first thing, the thing that made everything else possible, was fire. But not fire the way you picture it, not a convenient campfire that someone lights with matches and tends casually. Fire in the ancient world was a survival technology so critical that its loss could mean the death of a group. Ancient humans did not just use fire, they maintained it, transported it, protected it as the most valuable resource their group possessed. Evidence from ancient hearths suggests that some fires were kept burning continuously for months or longer, not because ancient humans were lazy, because letting them go out in severe cold was a risk no group could afford to take. But fire only warms what is immediately near it, and the ancient world offered no insulated walls to hold that warmth. So the second innovation was architecture, and here is where it gets extraordinary. Ancient humans in frigid environments built structures that modern engineers still study for their efficiency. Mammoth-woven houses on the Ukrainian steppe, dated to 15,000 years ago, used the bones and tusks of dozens of mammoths to construct dome-shaped shelters covered in hides. These were not primitive huts. The bones weighed hundreds of kilograms each. Moving them required coordinated group effort across long distances. The structures, when complete, were capable of trapping enough body heat from the people inside to maintain survivable temperatures even when conditions outside were lethal. The knowledge required to build them, which bones, which configuration, how to anchor hides against wind, was accumulated over generations and passed down with the same care that modern societies pass down written knowledge. Your ancestors had no books. They had something older and in many ways more durable. They had each other. And that is the third innovation, the one that modern humans most consistently underestimate: social structure. Humans survive cold not primarily through individual capability, but through collective organization. Studies of contemporary indigenous communities in Arctic and subarctic environments consistently show that the most dangerous condition is not extreme cold itself, it is social isolation in extreme cold. A person alone in severe cold dies. A group with distributed skills, shared knowledge, and cooperative labor survives conditions that should be biologically impossible. Ancient humans in glacial Europe did not survive as heroic individuals. They survived as networks, extended family groups who maintained relationships with neighboring groups, who shared information about game movements, about safe routes, about which plants remained edible under snow, who came together in times of scarcity to pool resources instead of competing for them. The social technology that allowed this, the trust networks, the reciprocal obligations, the shared identity that made one group willing to help another, was not natural. It was built, deliberately, over generations, through rituals, through shared symbolic systems, through the same impulse to communicate and connect that drives human behavior today. The cave paintings of the last ice age, the bison and horses painted across cave walls in southern France and northern Spain, some of the most stunning images ever made by human hands, were not idle decoration. They were part of a social technology, a shared symbolic world that bound dispersed human groups into something larger than any single band could have been alone. Art, in the Ice Age, was infrastructure. And then there was clothing. Not animal hides thrown over a shoulder, fitted, layered, sewn clothing, the product of technology so sophisticated that the needle required to make it, carved from hollow bird bone with a tiny eye to thread sinew, represents one of the most remarkable engineering achievements of the ancient world. A person wearing well-made, fitted clothing in -20 conditions has a survival advantage that is not incremental, it is categorical, the difference between dying and not dying. The oldest confirmed sewn clothing dates to approximately 30,000 years ago, but the bone needles appear earlier, and the kind of knowledge required to create fitted garments, pattern recognition, material science, sequential construction, is the same cognitive machinery that builds cities. It was being run in an ice age, on a bone needle, by people trying not to freeze to death. Here is what all of this adds up to. Your ancestors survived conditions that would kill most modern humans within a day. They did it not because they were physically superior to you. The genome has barely changed. The body is the same. They did it because they were cognitively extraordinary, because they solved problems across generations, stored solutions in culture and practice and social structure, and passed those solutions forward with a fidelity that allowed each generation to stand on what the last had learned. They survived not as individuals, not through toughness alone, but as a species that had discovered something no other animal had ever discovered. That the knowledge you accumulate and share matters more than the body you were born with. The ice tried to erase them, and they built a world instead.